Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Britt Kanawha West Hancock Athletics Podcast. This is Dan Kroll on May 28th, 2024 for episode 109. And this evening, I'm doing my first cheerleading episode. My guest tonight is former West Hancock and UNI cheerleader Shae Smith. How you doing tonight, Shae?
Good. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
you bet. I've pretty much had the majority of your family on the podcast, so it just made sense to get you on here and almost complete that whole
Yep.
you want to call it with the Smith crew. So before we get to Shae, I have 22 sponsors tonight. Like always, our money that comes in from sponsorships goes to the Sanger Legacy Fund. The Sanger Legacy Fund money is used to fund the West Hancock Hall of Fame, gives out scholarships to graduating seniors. We support the athletic activity funds at West Hancock, any other community outreach program as well. So if you want to sponsor the podcast, go ahead and get a hold of me. If you want to just give to the Sanger Legacy Fund, you can go to sangerstrong.com and do so there. Again, my sponsors, you can see on my screen, I have Levi Non-Trucking, Swenson's Do It Best Hardware, Triple B's Food Trucks, the Kanawha Community Home, White Barn Picket Fence, Daniel's Auto Collision, Trolson's Auto Parts, Kelly Real Estate, Nick Schmidt, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Stevens Realty, Mojo Productions, Vexen Fishing and Tackle Industries, owned by Derek and Liz Ing, Doug and Kathy Zool, Carty Care Transportation LLC in Kanawha, Jeff and Becky Nielsen, Lehman Family Dental in Clear Lake, Deemer Realty, Katie's Salon and Tanning in Titonka, the Britt Vet Clinic, Carlson Drainage owned by Darren Carlson, Window World in Mason City, and Britt's Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise. That takes about half the podcast right there, just going through those sponsors. A lot of them. I really appreciate the sponsors and the money they give to the legacy fund. So make sure you thank those businesses and support those businesses for all they do for the community. All right, way back when I added a second episode to this because I've done so many episodes now. I'm doing 50 episodes ago and 100 episodes ago, which is kind of crazy that this old podcast has made it this far. 50 episodes ago, on episode 59, I talked to the 1987 Britt wrestling team, and 100 episodes ago, on episode 9, was the 1986 Britt girls golf state championship team. So I'll have those linked to my posts on Facebook. You can check out those prior episodes if you missed those. All right, let's get going here again. Shae Smith. She's a West Hancock graduate, former cheerleader there, and just now considered a former cheerleader at UNI, as you were telling me you're going into student teaching this fall and going to wrap up college. So tell everybody again who you are, where you are these days, and what you're doing to keep busy.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I'm Shae Smith, like Dan had said, and my parents are Ted and Heather Smith. And then my brothers, as many know, are Kellen and Teague Smith. So that's just us five. Where I am now, I'm just living at home. I went to UNI for 3 years, graduated early, so that's been good and bad, happy and sad. So, but I just finished up as a student taking classes there, and I have student teaching in the fall. Of this upcoming school year. And right now, like I said, I'm just living at home and working at the Britt food store and at Hillside on the weekends, bartending and waitressing, and a little bit of tutoring and babysitting in between my other empty hours, but that's about it.
You were telling me where you're student teaching. Do you want to disappoint all the West Hancock people out there and tell them where you're student teaching?
Yes, I am student teaching at Garner for 8 weeks, but don't worry, I'm not going to convert. At least I don't think so. So go Eagles forever. But yeah, and then I'll be at Forest City with the Indians for my other 8 weeks. But yeah.
We'll forgive you. Don't worry. So.
Thanks.
And then I had a question based on what you just said. You said you graduated in 3 years roughly. Was it due to like high school classes you took, or did you load up in the summer and take a lot of classes? How'd you get to graduate almost a year early?
Yeah, good question. So in high school, I graduated from West Hancock in 2021. But then my senior year and like half of my junior year, I really loaded up on college credits. I've just always been pretty ambitious, and I had a lot of great help from Matt Welp and my teachers. They did an awesome job connecting me to NIAC for all of my college credits that I took before I actually went to UNI. So that's how I was able to get about a full year done. And then I worked pretty hard at UNI as well to get done in that 3 years. Because I did add a math minor, so that added on a whole semester of time. But yeah, so
Nice.
that's how I did that.
Save a lot of money in the long run, that's for
Oh
sure.
yeah, definitely worth it.
Yep. So like I said, this is a cheerleading episode. I have never done a cheerleading episode, and this might not surprise anyone, but I was not a cheerleader. And so I told Shae before we hit record, I'm like, you're gonna have to really explain things to me because it's just a world I haven't really lived in. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the world of cheerleading and talk some West Hancock and some UNI with you. So here we go. You already said you graduated from West Hancock in 2021. Who are some of your classmates? I'm so far out now, it's hard for me to, besides maybe football players, hard for me to keep track of
Mhm.
who's in what class. So who are some of your classmates? And then also some of your teachers.
Um, yeah. Classmates, like for athletes that probably would have been really known would be like Rachel Lear, Cole Kelly, Tanner Thompson, Kason Barnes, Blake Baker, Grace Rosine, she was always in the fine arts, Colin Ford, Nicole Lemon, Eileen Lechuga, Shane Osterkamp. That's just to name a few, but I think I was a class of 33, so pretty small, but I would say typical average size at West Hancock.
Yeah. And who are some of the teachers that, it's only been 3 years, but you remember and have good memories of and influence you to maybe become a teacher?
Yeah, so I had in the high school pretty much all of the same teachers that we have now, for those who are familiar with them, but just to name a few, I had Miss T, Holly Lang, Mark Sanger, Coach P. Um, it's funny how you kind of forget when you have to remember them all, but
Yeah, on the spot stuff.
um,
What about elementary? Did you do that? I can't remember what it's called, where you go down and work with the teacher one period a day, kind of help them check
um,
papers or read with kids and stuff. Did you do that?
I did do Eagle Buddies, if that's what you're talking about. I pretty much just worked with like one or two students for like I don't know if it was like 30 minutes or an hour, like one day a week. It's
Okay.
probably changed since then, but I did do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that what got you thinking about teaching a little bit? Kind of dabbling in there with the elementary?
Oddly, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. You know, you hear all these stories. People are like, "Oh, since kindergarten, I've always wanted to be a dental hygienist or I've always wanted to be a teacher and so on and so forth." And I didn't know, and that was stressful for me at first because everyone my age knew what they were doing, what profession they wanted to go into. And so one day I just sat down and really thought about, okay, do I want to work with people or do I want to work in an office, be a little bit more secluded? Do I want to work with numbers, or what age group of people do I want to work with? And everything, personality and morals wise kind of boiled down to being a teacher. And so I guess you could say I would describe myself as outgoing. I love young people, and a lot of my teachers inspired me to become a teacher too. So
Good. Yeah, I
yeah.
was just talking on the phone to Ren Kalstorff the other day. She just
Hmm.
as a fourth grade teacher, teaching for what, 37 years, I think she said. Eagle buddies or whatever you called it. I don't remember what we called it in high school, but I went down every day and worked with her. And I already kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher, but working with her every day really made me go, yep, this is what I'm
Hmm.
doing. And now I'm ironically teaching fourth grade just like she did. So
Yeah.
wasn't sure if that was still alive and well at West Hancock. They were still doing that program because it's a very, very good program to get people interested. So
Yeah.
what got you interested in cheerleading? When did you start doing that?
I honestly don't know. I think I started very young, actually in gymnastics when I was in probably second grade, I think. I was actually talking to my parents. I was like, oh, I don't remember even how little I was when I started. I just remember being really little. And I think it was probably one of those things, I was messing around in the house doing cartwheels and somersaults, and they were probably like, oh, we got to get her out of the house, get her into some kind of activity. And so I think that's kind of how it all started. And then I ended up really loving gymnastics. And unfortunately, my coach made some bad decisions, and it kind of led to cheerleading. And I joined Iowa All Stars out of Mason City, and they are a competitive cheer team um, that originated from Des Moines. I don't believe they're still in Mason City. I think it might have shut down, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it started. But
Along with cheerleading in high school, did you play any sports or any other activities?
yes, I was very involved in the school. I did probably just about everything you can imagine. I played volleyball for 4 years, basketball for 4 years, track for 4 years. I did football cheerleading for 3, and that was the only cheerleading I did in high school.
Oh,
And then I did 1 year of softball. And then fine arts wise, I did choir, and like electos and all of the solo ensemble things that came along with that. And then NHS, pep club, um,
pretty
student
much everything. Yeah.
council. So yeah, I was very involved in a good variety of things, I would say.
How did you manage volleyball and football cheer at the same time? What would that look like?
Ooh, that was pretty difficult. I think the school still allows it, but I'm not sure if anybody does it. But typically it was football cheerleading practices early in the morning, like 5, 6 a.m., depending on, what part of the season we were in. So say come homecoming time, we would be there probably at like 5 in the morning, preparing like a routine or putting up stuff on the boys' football lockers and whatnot. But then after school, I had volleyball. So I was very busy for sure.
Yeah. Yep. And then like Friday night games, if you had practice after
hmm
school for volleyball and had to get to an away game, was that cutting things pretty close or were they pretty good to work with you?
I don't honestly remember having a volleyball game on football
I mean,
Fridays.
practice. Did you have like volleyball practice on
Oh,
Fridays?
yeah, we did have practices, and I can't remember if they were cut short or if I left early. I
Yeah.
think my freshman year they were cut short, and after that I left early.
Okay.
But just kind of depended on the coach. I had a different coach every year for volleyball, so it just kind of depended on that coach's preference.
Yeah. Yeah. We all know like on a Friday night, see the cheerleaders on the track cheering, facing the crowd. What else goes into high school football cheerleading than just cheering at a game?
I would say there's a lot of behind the scenes things. Probably the football boys would know. But decorating the lockers, creating like the run through banner for the games. Um, Putting together team meals. The parents did a lot of that, but every once in a while, especially like my freshman year when Linda Sanger was still coaching, we were pretty involved in that. And then we obviously have a very good track record for football and making it to the dome, which is really awesome and super cool experience for us cheerleaders as well. Um, but anytime the football players had snacks on the bus, we would put those together, help with that. Um, Homecoming, we did a lot of decorating the hallways, the lockers. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so, yeah, you said you graduated in 2021. So going back to those 4 football seasons, you were a cheerleader. 2017 football team made the quarterfinals.
hmm
2018 was in the dome and lost in the semifinals. 2019 was the state championship win, Coach Sanger's last game, and then 2020, your senior year, was a quarterfinal loss at Grundy. So you were a part of a lot of big games and big
hmm
moments. Let me see, three games in the dome, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 11 playoff games. What were some of your favorite memories of football cheer and those particular teams?
I don't know if I can pick just one favorite memory.
Well, pick a bunch. Go with
Um,
whatever you have.
But I would say the away games were always so much fun to me just because I loved the ride there. Just being with the girls on the team, we would talk about funny things, tell silly stories. So there was a lot of good bonding moments on the rides there and back. I think probably one of the hardest memories was when we lost to West Sioux. I still remember, I think the score was like 52-12
Yep.
or 54-12 or something.
54-12.
And
Yep.
that was, what's that?
Yes, 54-12. Yep.
Yeah, and that was like a 3-hour drive, I believe. So that was definitely memorable, but not one of my favorite memories. But being in the dome, that's super awesome. Yeah.
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 What about winning the state championship, being a part of that? What do you remember from that 2019 season?
So I actually did not cheer that year. I only cheered my freshman, sophomore, and senior year. It was
Okay.
my junior year that I didn't cheer. Honestly, I don't recall why I didn't go out. Looking back, obviously, I kind of regret that. Um, I think maybe I was worried about being too busy, or I'm not really sure. Maybe it was the volleyball and football cheer. It got to be too much for me at that point,
Yep.
but. Yeah, I did go to that game though, and I was in the stands still cheering, doing the fight song, singing along to all the cheers. So it was still a fun experience.
Yeah. I know like your brothers, Kellen's just done playing and Teague's gonna be a junior. So I'm sure you came back and watched some of the games or watched the live stream and you probably got
Hmm.
into it because it was your brother in there. When you're a cheerleader though, how much of the game could you follow? I mean, the players are kind of in front of you. You're sometimes facing the crowd, focus on the next cheer. Was it hard to follow the game itself, or were you still able to kind of know the flow of the game?
I would say, I've grown up around sports my whole life. So for me personally, I felt like I could always follow the game fairly well.
Yeah.
But there were a few times that I remember, on first downs, it was like, oh crap, which direction do I point? Because we would do, and that's another eagle, first down, and point whichever direction the ball was facing. And I remember, I'd look at Pam's subject and be like, Pam, which direction do we point? And so she's awesome. I think she's been named super fan a few times. And I would say that's a great reason right there. She's a super fan, even helping out the cheerleaders. So,
Yep,
um,
definitely.
but when your back is to the game, cheering to the crowd, there has always been a few instances, where there's a player down on the field or something happens, and you miss it. But the good thing is you always have the announcers, so you have to be really attuned to, okay, what did the announcer just say? Or you
Mm.
kind of pick up on the crowd's behavior. Like if they're really quiet and staring at the field, that's typically a time where you look and you're like, okay, there's a player down, what do we do next? Or there's a lot more than just watching the field. It's a lot of watching the crowd, listening to the announcer. So
Yep.
ears always have to be on, always have to be looking, just paying attention 24/7. So
Any close calls physically, like players running out of bounds, and or are you guys far enough away that you're probably not in danger?
um in high school I would say that no, because we had those boxes on the track that we were on top of.
Mhm.
And then there was a good amount of space between, the field and the track and the players. But in college, it was really hard because I had well, I guess it was probably like this much space,
Yeah.
and there's 2 rows of cheerleaders, and we are, spaces and windows right next to each other all the way down that sideline. And in college, you have, minimum 200-pound football players, and there's definitely been a few times where they're coming at you full speed right through the end zone, tackling each other or diving for the ball, or a ball comes flying after a kick. So again, you just always have to be aware of your surroundings, and
Yeah.
definitely no injuries though. So that's good. But
You mentioned Mrs. Sanger. Linda Sanger was your coach, and along with Shell Anderson, your first year. What do you
mhm.
remember about Mrs. Sanger?
I just love her. She always brought such a light to everything. She just so positive, and she was really amazing at um telling me, Shay, you need to try this, or can you help out with this? And she really got my foot in the door with a lot of things. Just the smallest things. And which was really awesome. And Shelly Anderson also did a really great job, of putting together some homecoming routines for us and keeping us on task. I like to goof around a lot. It's my personality. I'm a chatty Cathy, so runs in my blood. But yeah, so they were really awesome coaches. They did a lot for us.
Was Shelley your coach all 4 years, the 3 years that you were in cheer, or did you have a different coach throughout?
No. So my freshman and sophomore year, I had Shell Anderson both times. And then my senior year, I had Autumn Weaver. And she was a first year teacher and coach at West Hancock that year. She was a science teacher, I would say, at general, but I think maybe she taught like physics. I never had any of her classes. They were more, I think they were advanced science classes or classes that I had already taken, so I never had her as a teacher, but she was an amazing coach. And shout out to her because she's the whole reason that I tried out for the UNI cheer team. So
Is she
she,
still is she still at West Hancock?
nope, she's at Cedar Falls High School now.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't recognize that name, and that was only a couple years ago. So like, oh,
Yeah, that was her. I think that was her only year there. It's funny because she's from Garner, so we were both at West Hancock the same year, and then we both went to Cedar Falls the same next year because she was a
okay,
teacher there, and then I was a student. So
nice.
yeah.
You mentioned she helped you get into cheerleading aspect at UNI. Before we do that, though,
Mhm.
I want to talk about your brothers for a quick minute because I know you're their biggest fan. I always see you posting stuff and you're all other stuff.
Yep.
You didn't, maybe it was Kellen's freshman year was your senior year, so he was not maybe playing varsity or anything at that point except for wrestling. What do you remember? Well, he would have been sixth place that year as a freshman. What was it like getting to watch your brothers these past few years wrestle and have as much success as they have, and then football as well?
Oh, it's so fun watching them. I love all of their accomplishments. They have so much to be proud of. And sometimes I like to think I played a role in that. There's been many times in our basement or in the kitchen where they just use me as their wrestling dummy. So sometimes I like to think I helped in that, but probably not that much. They're much better wrestlers than I am, but um, football wise, I remember Kellen didn't play too much his freshman year for varsity football. Which I would say, pretty typical. And he was kind of little, so it was really fun to see him when he would go in on a play. I'd be like, "Oh, there's my brother!" I'd get so excited and cheer extra loud and tell all my friends, "Look, there he is! He's in! He's on the field!" And same with Teague, his freshman year, and even watching him his sophomore year, watching from the stands, I still do the same thing, still get super excited.
Mhm.
As far as wrestling, because of cheerleading, I would say I missed a few wrestling meets. But then like all the big ones, I was always there. State wrestling, districts, sectionals, which I know they don't do that anymore, but they did a few years ago. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, it's so much fun watching them. Very emotional though.
Oh man, I'm just a fan, and do what I do for West Hancock. I'm not related to, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not ready for my kids to get to that stage and age where they're in
Yeah.
big events. Right now they're third grade baseball, and I get nervous enough for them. So,
Hmm.
but just I've gotten to know Kellen over the last couple of years, and just a class act kid.
Yeah.
Just so proud of all the things he's accomplished and the way he's handled himself. It's just pretty neat to see. And then I got to ask about your grandpa, state
Hmm.
champion 1960. Talk about your grandpa a little bit and what he accomplished and just the guy he is today.
He's a solid man through and through. He has taught us so many life lessons. He has this saying that he tells us, be an officer and a gentleman, or be an officer and a lady, which is very fitting for Kellen, going to West Point. But what that saying means, is, um, it like demand as much respect as you give, if you want respect from people, and you got to give just as much. And so I think that is just an awesome life lesson he's taught us. And as far as wrestling, he never really talks about it ever. Same with my dad. He was a college wrestler, and he's helped my brothers tremendously, skill wise. They're very technical. And he's very good about, pushing, okay, you need to do these workouts, and we need to eat this way and cut weight this way. And so they don't really talk about it much, but they had very successful careers. And I know they've mentioned, the wrestling style and the technique and everything has really evolved through the years.
Mhm.
Um, and like I've heard my dad mention, the knowledge that Kellen and Sieg have acquired and have now is so much. He feels as though like it's more than what he had at that age. Um, but the success rate, is just it's amazing across the board. They're all very successful wrestlers, but it's just
Yeah,
changed over time, I would say.
definitely. And last question before we get to you and I. Um, Girls wrestling just started a couple years ago. So
Mhm.
it wasn't available when you were in high school. With your brothers and your dad and your grandpa, would you have been a wrestler in high school had it been available to you?
Oh, 100%. We joke around to this day that my mom was the reason, I wasn't a wrestler. I think she just, girls and wrestling, it hasn't always been associated with one another, but it's becoming more prevalent, and I think it's awesome. I think that it's just a great opportunity for women, to be exposed to wrestling and have that opportunity. But you saying that reminds me of a time when I was playing basketball in high school. AJ, our sports announcer, he had said something, I went for a rebound and took a girl down with me. And he's like, "Oh, that's the Smith wrestling blood in her."
Yeah.
So I guess a little bit of wrestling came out in me and in some other sports, but
Yeah.
yeah.
We said too, like Kennedy Kelly. She would
Hmm.
have probably been a state champion had they had wrestling when
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
she was also a basketball player. Got the Smith blood, the Kelly blood, just would have been fun to see what some of you guys could have done on the mat.
Hmm.
Let's get to you and I was about to say wrestling, cheerleading here. You mentioned Autumn Weaver kind of helped you get onto the cheer team or at least present that opportunity to you. How'd that go becoming a cheerleader at UNI?
Um, so like I had mentioned before, I did competitive cheerleading for many years, up until high school, and then I decided that I wanted to do high school sports, and have that experience under my belt loop. So I did away with competition cheer at that point, but I think, I kept my skills throughout the years. I lost some of them, but it's like it's muscle memory, once you get used to it, you build up the confidence to try something that you've done before, to try it again, it comes back with muscle memory. And I think she truthfully just, noticed that and saw all the potential in me. And she was a D2 cheerleader at Upper Iowa. And so I think just coming from that background, having her knowledge, her expertise and everything, she saw something great in me, and she told me one day, like, you should try out for a college level cheerleading team. And she even went as far to say, like, I think you could go D1 with your skills and potential you have. And at first I was like, really? Like, you think so? I'm so out of the loop. I haven't done these things in so long, like certain skills. um and she reached out to the coach at the time and got things set up and helped me, figure out where to try out and when and where and how. And after that, I just showed up to tryouts. Super long process, which isn't always the case, but yeah, I found out I made the cheer team, and one of the coolest days of my lives.
Yeah. So one question I had in the notes here then, I said, is it like, do you get recruited like you would if you're a football player, a wrestler, basketball player, or you mentioned tryouts? Is it more, can anyone show up to a tryout? Do you have to be invited to a tryout? Do they kind of seek you out? How's that look?
So it's a little bit different for each college, especially because like there's the Iowa High School Athletic Association, and cheerleading actually in Iowa is not a part of that. It's like that, and then cheerleading is its own thing. Two separate organizations. So gives different colleges and schools the freedom, to do that process however they want. At UNI, it's a little less traditional because we actually do not have a coach that is paid through the university. We just have student coaches, and our team elects them. And then that's who kind of like is in charge of us, sets things up, gets transportation and game day things ready. But anyway, so for the tryout process, anybody can do that. So you just have to have the information. You just have to know when and where, and what clothes to wear. And once you reach out to them, they provide you with the necessary material. When I tried out, I had to learn the fight song, a cheer, a dance, and then it was optional to display tumbling skills, standing and running tumbling. So luckily I still had my skills, which was pretty much bonus points for me that I had that. And so at tryouts I used all those skills, and then I made the team with that. Um but yeah, every school is different. Some schools offer scholarships, and UNI does not, because again, with the coaching thing, we're not considered an athletics program. We're just a student organization without that coaching title. So anybody can try out at any point, but then schools that offer scholarships, you can be recruited similar to how you would for football. You can be like a preferred walk on, and kind of earn your spot. In cheerleading, oh, I'm not going to remember now what we call them. It's not a substitute. I can't remember, but basically you are like a preferred walk-on, and at any moment you can step in for the first string person, whoever has that spot. If you start performing better, you can take their spot. Or if they get injured, something happens, you can take their spot. So very similar to other sports.
Is that
Just
second
depends
leg
on,
ready to go?
yep, just depends on the school for the tryout process and recruit process.
So you said you don't have a coach. So during those tryouts, is it the team captains, those ones in charge that determine who makes the team and who doesn't?
No. So to keep it as unbiased as possible, we have like a cheer fund account through that the university handles, but we like it's our money for the cheer team. And what was I gonna say? What was your question again?
About like, so during the tryouts, you said you don't have a
Oh,
coach.
yes.
So
Okay,
who
so then
determines who makes
so
the team
we
at the
yes.
tryouts?
Yep, so we use that money to pay for the judges. Yep.
Okay.
And so we reach out to different people. There's like UCA staff, which is the United Cheer Association. Um, and so sometimes we hire some of those people because they are professionals, they are the um cheer association for um like everything for all colleges. And then there's also um uh F or UFA, I think, United. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different acronyms, different people that we hire through different things.
Mhm.
And they're all very professional. So that's who decides who makes the team. And then we go from there. And after we have our team put together from tryouts, then the previous year's team will decide who the coaches are and who the captains are. And there's three
Okay.
coaches and three captains each year.
Okay. So captains aren't coaches, they're separate.
Correct. Yep.
That's interesting. I've never heard of a setup like that before, but
Yes. It's
what
very it's very hard to follow. It's kind of confusing because there's a lot of fine lines, between what's considered athletics, what's considered an organization, what's considered a coach, what's not. So we've run into a few problems, with the university before, like what's fair, what's not, what can we have, what can we not.
Yeah.
So in some ways that's unfortunate, but
When you were talking about that, it made me think, like, I know when UNI goes to play Iowa State or Iowa, those schools
mhm.
pay UNI like it's like seven or $800,000 to play that game, and
Yes.
that funds a lot of that year's athletic department. Like pays for salaries and pays for
Mhm.
just upgrades and equipment and stuff. So like, yeah, the more you're talking about, we don't have an actual coach. I think schools, even though they're considered Division 1 AA for some sports and Division 1 for some other sports, it's
Mhm.
not like there's just unlimited money coming through the door. I mean,
Right.
it's a tough business. So that's interesting. I never knew that about it. I just assumed maybe you were on scholarship. I didn't know that.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's the biggest difference between high school cheer and college cheer? What's some of the main, like, wow, that's
Mm,
nothing like I experienced at Britt.
I would say one of the most defining characteristics of like a high school versus a college team would be like you have people in college who want to be there. They're pursuing a career in cheer, whether they're going professional to be like a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader or whether they want to stop, just after college. Um, and there's totally nothing wrong with a high school cheer athlete who wants to be on the team just because, or because their parents need them to, or, they're trying to stay in shape for another sports season. There in high school, I would say there's a variety of reasons that people go out for cheerleading, whereas in college, it's more they're making it a life career, or you really want to be there, almost like you can't let go of the sport.
Did anybody that you cheered with end up going on to, like you said, you use like Dallas Cowboys as an example? Did anyone go on to a professional level?
Not a professional level team as in like cheering for like a football team, no. But there have been quite a few girls who have gone on to be a UCA cheerleader, which again is the United Cheer Association. They can, they're pretty much the cheer experts in the cheer world, and they are a team that goes around and hosts different camps and different activities and whatnot for college teams. So actually my freshman year at UNI, we were granted the opportunity to go to Wisconsin, and we worked with the UCA cheerleaders, and they gave us lots of cool tips and tricks and different skills that we could try. And overall, that just gave us a vast variety of ideas for what to display on game days, which was really awesome. So there's nobody who has gone on, to cheer for a professional sport, but there have been people who have made a coaching career out of it, or
Yes, you're saying you can be a professional. That doesn't mean you're actually cheering. It's more like you can.
yeah, it could be from the teaching and coaching perspective too.
Cool. It's neat.
Yeah.
How physically taxing is it cheering at that level? Like, what's your training regimen? Did you have to go to the weight room? How many hours a week did you guys put into what you do?
I would say we didn't put in as many hours as like a school where cheerleading is considered a sport because they have a coach. Um and again, and I would say a lot of that boils down to the fact that we only would travel when the team, our opponent, was paying us to play them. For example, when we played Iowa State in football, their team paid UNI to play them. So then we were granted the opportunity because of that money to travel to Iowa State. So that definitely lessened the amount of, practices and time that we had to put forth. But there was definitely in the summer, we had a practice weekend every month. So like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We practiced all day, one weekend a month. And then during the school year, it was usually 2 to 3 practices. Um, yeah, so probably between like 6 and 10 hours, I would say, of physical practice. But then we also would do lots of volunteer hours around campus and the Cedar Falls, Hudson community area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there like certain level of conditioning or physical ability you had to maintain? I think like my sister's in the military. She has to do a PT test every 6 months or something. Did you have to be able to prove and maintain a certain amount of physical ability to continue doing what you're doing?
Yep. So in the summer, so usually tryouts are like in April, and then you get May off. That's the only month of the whole school year you get off for cheer. And then you start in June with summer practices. In June, July, and August, you have pretty much those 3 practice weekends to get in shape, learn the material. Um, and then in August, that third practice weekend, you have like a fitness test that you have to pass. Every cheerleader has to do it. I don't, most of it is like body weight stuff, push-ups, squats, burpees.
Mhm.
Because we're just lifting bodies, when we're stunting, we're not lifting weights. Um, Not to say that it's any easier than lifting weights at sometimes, but yeah, a lot of body weight exercises to strengthen our arms and our legs. So,
What was kind of your main role throughout your cheerleading career? Were you with stunts and positioning and stuff?
mm-hmm. Okay, so in a stunt, for those who don't know, there's 4 people. In just like a regular plain stunt, you have the flyer, the one in the air, back base, which is the one in the back, kind of hidden. Usually they're really tall, you can't really see them. And then you have your 2 side bases. When you're looking at the stunt, the one on the left is your main base, and the one on the right is the secondary base. Um, the main base typically has a fairly simple like hand grip when you're gripping the foot. This is kind of the position that you are always holding. And they're just kind of the stabilizer, and as well as the back base. And then the secondary has all the weird, funky hand grips. To throw the flyer's body, to twist the foot, to catch the leg. You had to do all these wonky things, and that was my position throughout college. I did try some flying, and it was okay. There was definitely people who were more conditioned for the position, so that's the way it stayed, which was okay with me. As I've gotten older, I've learned I'm not invincible. So, shocker, I know.
Well,
But
you just wait, just wait.
I
Just
know
wait.
I'm not even that old yet, but sometimes it feels like it. But then in high school, I was mostly a flyer, and I think that probably just had to do with, my skill level from competitive cheer over the years. And it comes down to size a lot of the times too. You just put the smallest person in the air usually, and sometimes you just hope for the best that they can do the skills that you need being the smallest person, but that's not always the case. So if you're looking to be a cheerleader and you're kind of tall or you think you're too big to fly, that's not always the case. So
When you said you hope for the best, I thought you meant like when they throw them up, they just hope for the best that someone's going to catch them. But when he started, it was like, yeah, I hope they catch them. But I
Yeah.
remember reading once years ago that cheerleading had some of the highest injury rates out of any sport, like
Hmm.
compared to football and some of those high contact sports. There's just always a chance for injury. Did you experience any injuries or see any injuries from teammates?
Um, yeah, I broke my ring finger. I would say that was the extent of my injuries. I'm pretty sure I probably had a few concussions, but I just played tough cookie, and pretended that I didn't, never got tested for it, which is not smart. Do not recommend that. Um,
How did
but I
you
think,
get concussions possibly? How'd that look?
yeah, so all through stunting, in the college level cheerleading, we do a lot of pyramids. So basically you take that 4-man simple stunt and you might stack it like 3 stunts wide and 2 or 3 stunts high. So basically we can have anywhere from like 4 to 30 people in a stunt. And the highest we've gone is 4 or 3 people high. So, we have people on the very bottom, and then we have people standing on them, and then we have a third person on the way top. So it can get really tall, really scary. In those 3-tier high stunts, I think the scariest thing would be when we have this one stunt called a 2-2-1 front flip. So we have 2 people and then 2 people, and then we have one person on the very top. Um and they do a front flip off, and I've had to be in the catch group for that and catch the person flipping. That is the scariest stunt ever to me. Not everyone agrees with that, but there's just something about it. So um, yeah, there is definitely some dangerous things that we've done. And I know like on football game days in our pre-game performance, we have like I want to say between like 20 and 25 people involved in a pyramid. Um, and those are usually like 3, 4 people high, our highest flyer. And when one person falls, everything collapses typically. So it can get very dangerous, and everybody has to be aware, focus on their position, ready at any point, just to catch whoever's fallen. So
Talk about the game day experience at UNI inside the dome. You watched, Wes Hancock play there a lot, cheered there a few times.
mhm.
Different level at college, 1AA football, stadium's probably full. Talk about the atmosphere at the dome for UNI football.
It's awesome. I think Um, the fans are awesome, and just especially when the students, they start beating on the side of the wall or on the bleachers to make a lot of sound, that's always so like exhilarating and so fun to be a part of that. Especially in, those tense moments on the 3rd down and you need to get a 1st and 10, or in your 4th down, and you're going for a touchdown, or just any scenario like that, those high pressure situations are always super exciting, especially at a college level. Um, but yeah, there's a lot more fans, obviously, than there was at West Hancock. So I would say on my first game day, it was probably the first like handful of game days. I was a nervous wreck, but
Mhm.
it just boils down to remembering what you did in practice and focusing on your skills, and what you can control. So
Mhm.
there's certain things you can't control in game days, and you just got to roll with the punches. But
Did you get to know any of the players or coaches throughout your time there?
yes. I would not say I actually worked for the university through dome operations and the concessions as like facility management. So I worked security and stocked concessions and did a lot of behind the scenes things with setting up events and tearing them down. So when I wasn't cheering, there was a lot of times where I would meet a lot of the players who were either also working in the same position I was, or I would meet them as I'm like setting up for a football event, and then I would actually cheer at it, or I would set up for a basketball game and then cheer at it. So I would meet a lot of coaches and players through that, which was really cool. You feel like, oh, I'm meeting a famous person, and then sometimes I almost forget, like maybe to a little kid, I am famous. So just remembering like those humbling moments, to appreciate where I'm at and how far I've gotten. Sometimes it's hard to remember that when you get caught up in all the moments. So,
Yeah. What was a
um,
better atmosphere, the dome or the McLeod Center for basketball? What did you enjoy more?
I would say I think the dome through and through, football season was my favorite to cheer for just because of, our halftime performances and our pregame performances. And then the games were just so much fun to watch live and in person.
Mhm.
And there's a ton of fans. Not to say there weren't any really awesome basketball games because there were. I actually got to touch Caitlin Clark's elbow, not on purpose, on accident, but the Iowa women's basketball team did play UNI this school year. So that was really cool this winter when I got to be on the court for that game and I got to see all those really awesome dedicated Iowa players, and kudos to the UNI team for going up against them. That's a lot of pressure with the media and everything, I'm sure. So
Definitely.
it was awesome.
So
That was a really fun atmosphere to be in.
I touched Caitlin Clark's elbow. That's
Yeah, she was just kissing to the crowd, like, oh, thanks for coming. And I accidentally bumped elbows with her and she looked at me and I was like, oh my gosh, Caitlin Clark. That was so cool. But
yeah, we're season ticket holders for Iowa women, so we had a lot of fun going to their games this year. It was just unbelievable. So
yep.
so you were a team captain your senior year. Talk about that process and what that meant to you to be a captain and what extra responsibilities did that bring on your plate?
Um, extra responsibilities wise, we pretty much just did anything that the coaches asked us to do, which could go as simple as, creating a t-shirt design. I did a lot of that. I would say my creative side came out. Part of the reason why I want to be a teacher. So I did a lot of t-shirt designing, organizing themed practices for summer practices and even like during the school year. And cheerleading, I think it's safe to say across the board for many cheer teams, it's very popular thing to have theme practices. So during July, we did like a 4th of July theme practice. In other months, we did, like neon or blackout or all purple. Just different fun things like that. I think it really goes back to, being a team, doing things as one, as a whole. Practice as a team, dress as a team, you play as a team. So I think that's a really important factor. And it's kind of cool, getting to choose, be a part of that role and choose, what we got to wear. But also keeping in mind others' thoughts as well, as in a leadership position, you can't, do now that you hold the power, you can't just do what you want to do. You have to keep in mind, what's best for the team. Um, so with that being said, we did a lot of team bonding as well. So I had to think about, okay, what would be a fun activity that a majority of people, can do or would enjoy doing? What would help the team bond and get together as a whole. But yeah,
Sure, there
that
was
was probably my main responsibilities.
never any drama though between teenage and early 20-year-old cheerleaders. I'm sure
Oh, never, never. How could
smooth
you say
sailing at all times, I'm sure.
that? For sure. Yes.
And speaking of drama, you were also a high school cheer coach in the last year or so, right? Talk about that,
Yes.
where you were doing that.
Yep. So I was at Dyke, New Hartford, which is about 10 miles from Cedar Falls. Um, And really, it was just kind of a happenstance thing. It fell into my hands. A former UNI cheerleader was a coach there at Dyke New Hartford and reached out to one of the girls who was the cheer coach at the time for UNI. And then that coach had said, to the team, hey, we have this position open. So and so is looking to fill it. We think you guys would be a great applicant. Um, and after that, I reached out to get some more information about it and went through the typical interview process with the school administration. And then they decided that I was the right fit for it, which is awesome. I was super grateful for that. Um, and oh boy, it was there were so many ups and downs, and I
Uh,
think it was a good segue into becoming not only a teacher, but a coach in the future, as I hope to continue doing. Um, I would say there's a lot of tough moments, where you have to think for everyone, what is a good, again, like what is best for the team. It's not just about one person or just a group of people or um yeah, and the parents are tough to handle. I had some run-ins with some of the parents, and it gets tough because everyone wants the best for everyone, and there's that fine line between um doing what's best for the team, and picking what maybe you want to do, what your favorite thing is, or
yeah.
um yeah, but there was a lot of super exciting times too. We actually competed. West Hancock doesn't do this, unfortunately. They don't compete at state cheer, which I really hope and pray that they can bring that back, or start doing it. I guess I'm not sure if they ever did compete, but Dike New Hartford does compete at state cheer for high school,
Mhm.
and I got to take them there, and that was super awesome.
Nice.
And we actually ended up playing the wrong music. So we had two routines that made it, or that went, and one of them performed and the music was just fine. And then there was a whole team performance and the wrong music started playing, but they did so awesome. And they were counting. So in cheer, you count like 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1, 3, 5, 7. You count in 8 counts. And so they just kept counting in those 8 counts, which is how you learn to dance and stunt and tumble to music. And they just persevered and it was awesome. And we got back on track halfway through the music, but it was kind of scary. I was like, oh my gosh, please, nothing go wrong. And then, one of the worst things that could go wrong at state cheer went wrong. And yeah.
The person running the audio just hit the wrong button or had the wrong thing in.
I'm really not sure. And honestly, it could have been my mistake because the music was on my phone, but then I gave it to the music guy. And, I mean, anything could have happened between my phone and him. So,
Yeah.
I can't really place blame or wouldn't want to. Things happen, but yeah, I don't really know what happened, but I just remember being super panicked. And then there was a moment, so music played to start the routine. And then there was a break in the middle where they would do a chant, where they were just saying a cheer out loud, and then the music would pick back up. So during that time where it was just them chanting and there was a break in the music, I went and talked to the music guy and was like, hey, we got to get this figured out. Like I know we start on 1 minute and 5 seconds in the music or wherever it was. And then he picked up right there when he needed to, which was super awesome. So kudos to that guy as well for getting that sorted out. He needs a pay raise, but
So
yeah.
working with high school kids, did you learn a little bit of patience? You still want to be a teacher, and do you want to do it again, coaching someday?
Oh, for sure. I absolutely loved it. One of my dreams is actually to own my own cheer company, similar to I All Stars, which is what I did competitive cheer through when I was younger in my teen years. And so I think that would be super awesome to be a part of something like that or own my own company. So that's the ultimate goal. But for now, coaching a high school team or even middle school, and being a teacher is still at the forefront of my mind. So
Coaching middle school cheerleading. We need more people in the world like you. I don't have enough patience in the world to do that, or the knowledge base. But
yeah.
I've done a lot of middle school sports, and oh man, it's
Hmm.
taxing, but fun at the same time. So, well, I
Yeah.
learned a lot about cheerleading tonight. Pretty neat, pretty cool, different world I dabbled into, and hopefully some people out there watching learned a few things. We're gonna end though on a pretty cool note. Talk about your great grandparents and their 75th wedding anniversary. They celebrated about a month ago. Talk about
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, my great grandparents, Alan and Francis, have been married 75 years this year, which is super awesome. And it's crazy that they're still alive. I think there's 105 of us now, from my great grandparents all the way down to the youngest grandchild or great grandchild.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, there's a lot of us, and it's really a testament to, the faith that they've had in each other, and they've lived through almost a century or like three-fourths of a century. So they've lived through a lot together. Um, and I hope to be just like them someday. So,
That was just so neat to see all the things on Facebook of them dancing and all
mhm.
looked like you would say 107 people or whatever. It looked like almost everyone was back.
Yeah.
Made it a pretty big deal. That was a pretty neat party to throw. And this Sunday is my 12th wedding anniversary. And some days I'm like, geez, I've been married 12 years already. That's crazy. I'm like, that's 63 years short of these people. That's nuts.
Mhm.
So just mind blowing. So
Yeah.
congratulations again to them. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Very awesome.
I think I got to get them on a podcast here soon and let them tell their story. That'd be pretty neat. So we're gonna wrap this thing up. Thanks again to my sponsors that you see on the screen. Lots of money going into the Sanger Legacy Fund. Make sure you support these great small businesses as much as you can. Next up, I don't have a date set yet, but I'm going to talk to Paul and Mathew Francis, and then Jarod Haxton, the Rietema crew, the 2016 Girls State Championship track and field team, and then Dave and Cliff Howlett round out the next 5 episodes. That'll get me pretty much through the summer. Take a little bit of time off in the summer to go on some trips and reload a little bit. So that'll get us till about August or so. Shae, any last minute things you want us to throw out there? Any shout outs or people we forgot to talk about as we were chatting along? Go ahead. Whatever you need to say.
Just say, shout out to my family. They've always been very supportive of everything cheer related that I've done, and shout out to all my coaches from competitive cheer and gymnastics all the way to my high school coaches and college coaches. It's all been super amazing. So, yeah, I thank everyone for all the amazing opportunities I've been granted.
Cool. And I thank you again for coming on. And I always end this with go Eagles. Have a good night, everybody.